Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Humanizing Assignments author webinar workshop. This is the second of our two-part webinar on the new title, Advancing Assessment for Student Success, Supporting Learning by Creating Connections Across Assessment, Teaching, Curriculum, and Co-Curriculum in collaboration with our colleagues and our students. My name is Patty Webb, and I am the Marketing Manager for Stylus Publishing. Stylus webinars bring you direct access to our authors and their latest titles. Today, I'm happy to introduce co-authors Amy Driscoll and Nelson Graff. Amy Driscoll retired from California State University, Monterey Bay as the founding director of the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Assessment, and from the Portland State University as director of Community University Partnerships. For the last 11 years, she has coordinated and taught in the Assessment Leadership Academy, a year-long program for faculty and administrators, and consulted nationally and internationally. She has co-authored Developing Outcomes-Based Assessment for Learner-Centered Education, a faculty introduction with Swaroop Wood, also published by Stylus in 2007. Nelson Graff currently serves as professor and director of the Communication Across the Disciplines, teaches first year reading and writing, and supports faculty around California State University, Monterey Bay in teaching reading and writing in their classes. Before that, he was an associate professor of English education at San Francisco State University, preparing future secondary English teachers. Today's webinar will work a little differently. As you can see, we are in a meeting versus our usual webinar setting. You've been asked to bring an existing assignment for today's workshop to discuss how we can make assignments more transparent and open them up to greater student success. We've also pre-selected an assignment that will be discussed in our main meeting room. So if you do not wish to be in a breakout room or would like to stay in the main meeting room, you're more than welcome. Near the end of the hour, you'll be randomly assigned into breakout room pairs, so you will discuss your assignments one-on-one. The breakout rooms will not be recorded, but our main room will be. With the end of the hour, you can have, at the end of the hour, you will be able to ask questions using our Q&A function or through our chat function. Stylus will also save and edit the chat log from today's meeting, so it will be shared along with the video recording on Friday. So without further ado, welcome to Amy and Nelson.
Thanks so much, Patty, and welcome everyone. Thank you for taking time to be with us on this, where we are, lovely day, where I am. I don't know how it is where you are, Amy.
I said it's actually a lovely day and it's not raining here in Portland, so that's something.
So this is our outline of what we're going to do in this workshop. So we'll introduce you to the workshop outline, the outcome. We'll have you do a little bit of individual reflection. Then you'll have about 20 minutes to think, pair, and share about an assignment example. Then Amy will introduce you to the idea of agency, or talk with you some about agency and how that functions in assignments. We'll introduce you to the transparent teaching and learning, actually the framework from the TILT project, the Transparency in Learning and Teaching, and our adaptation of it at Monterey Bay. With any luck, we'll have a little bit of time for you to work in breakout pairs to revise assignments, and then we'll wrap up. So our outcome, whoops, sorry, I jumped ahead too much. Our outcome will hopefully move you forward in terms of creating assignments that help students learn and enable them to demonstrate their achievement. So in the book, we make a distinction between assignments and assignment prompts. We'll be talking a little bit about both today, but our main focus is on designing assignment prompts that encourage students to show what they can do. So we'd like you to take just a couple of minutes to think about the assignment that you brought, or any particular assignment that you have in mind where students don't necessarily do exactly what you expect on the assignment. So imagine a specific assignment and think about what you wish students did better, what they frequently misunderstand, and to what extent students take ownership of their work and in what ways. So just take a minute or two to think, and then post whatever from your reflection you'd like into the chat so we can all see. Okay, so now if we can have some folks post in the chat answers to any of those questions. Thanks, Jeannie. You wish that students followed directions more closely. I had the experience recently of having an assignment in which students were using sources, and we discovered afterwards, looking at the assignments, that students didn't put a works cited list, or some students didn't put a works cited list. And I realized afterwards that that was because I didn't explicitly ask them to do so. I just assumed that they knew to do so. Todd, thank you. I wish students would pace themselves, devote time periodically to the work instead of waiting until the 11th hour. Of course, I wish I did that as an undergraduate as well. Very little ownership. Expect teachers to tell them every mini step. Have trouble creating models. They require lots of practice and scaffolding. Absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. Yes, Todd. I love that. I love that way of phrasing it, as a process rather than an event. I love that. Thank you. Yes, students don't often use the support resources. Yeah, they don't know how to put their insights together into an argument. Thank you all. So we're going to keep going. And Amy.
Okay. So we're going to break up this part of the work into pieces. In the first 7 minutes, I'm going to ask you to just read the assignment examples, and then I'll call a halt, and that's when we'll send you off into rooms and pairs to talk about it. Please look at these questions. Just a minute, I got to get rid of something here. There's some questions we want you to think about. Sorry, I can't get rid of the chat right now. Okay. The first one is, what do you notice with between the before and after versions? So pay attention to those differences. And what are the most important differences in the before and after? You might find some that are really significant and some that are just, minor. And then how would you revise the assignment to offer students more agency in terms of their focus or their participation or their format? So go to the website and begin reading those two assignments, the before and the after versions. And then I'll let you know when it's time to go to some rooms for chatting. All
And
right,
I've
everybody.
pasted a URL for a Google Doc that has the assignment example linked on the Google Doc.
I really like the rubric.
So say more about what you liked about the rubric.
Oh, just that it's in terms of the difference between the two assignments. It's one of the huge things for me because it really allows students to direct their efforts, and it also explains to them in minute detail kind of gives them insight into the faculty's thinking around what developing looks like, what good work looks like, and what more than good work looks like.
Yeah,
And
that is a huge difference between the two.
And I think, if for the students who are interested in that, that gives people deep insight into what's going on inside the cranium of the person standing in front of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else did you notice about the, so one of the things, I mean, of course, the more transparent is a lot longer.
Yes.
Um,
It's got
but
due dates.
it's got due dates. I think, I appreciate the more transparent one, showing the purpose of the assignment and the skills.
Nelson, I don't know if you can see them, but Daphne and Todd have just joined.
Valerie, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I found the second one was pretty much how we currently always do our assignments, being very informative as far as, due dates and suggest sort of milestone dates, the purpose definitely in there, what skills it's referring to, what knowledge is. I think for the completion of the assignment though, it was Catherine or Karen, I'm sorry if I got your name wrong there. We briefly spoke and said that, maybe an 8-page essay was a bit of overkill. And maybe there were some maybe more innovative ways to do the assessment, a video or a, I forget, Karen, step up, tell me what you said you were going to do instead.
Yeah, I was trying to type in the chat, but I couldn't do it fast enough. So I'll be easier to share. But yeah, I always try to think of more creative ways to have students present information, which gives them more choice and ownership of how they complete the assignment. So some of the things that I shared was maybe an infographic, which might highlight the key components that they learned or the key information or ideas they learned throughout the interview process. And then, or maybe a concept map, which might tie in the themes from the profession to what they learned in the interview. Maybe even a digital story or some sort of like quick PSA about the profession as well, like creating like a little video PSA from information they learned. So just trying to think of more creative ways for them to share it than a written paper.
And we've got some people saying in the chat that the second one was more visually organized, and that the second one gave additional details about how the assignment and knowledge and skills are applicable beyond the assignment. And Daphne likes the idea of different options for students. Valerie, good question. Why 2 interviews in the second one? Was the first one only 1 interview? Yeah. Maybe to give different perspectives.
All right. So some of you kind of led us into the next slide. That is the idea of providing some agency when you came up with all those different ways that students could show you that they were completing the assignment. And that's what we're moving to right now. Can we get the next slide, Nelson? Right. So one of the things we ask you to do is look and see if there was possibilities for agency. And what is commonly known as agency is the capacity of individuals to act independently and to make some free choices. And some of those choices would be the first one, that is the focus of the assignment. What is it going to be about? Or participation, can you do it as an individual or peer or group? What kind of format? And that's where you all came in with some ideas. What kind of deadlines do you have? Can you imagine letting students have agency with that? And what kind of feedback they're going to get? So let me show you some examples of those kinds of agency. All right, Nelson. One of the things I'm really careful to do is make sure students develop an expanded awareness of their own learning, like how they learn best, what kind of things support their learning, what kind of things motivate their learning, what are different ways they could show us that they've learned that really work for them to be successful. So I'm going to go back to that first one, agency and the assignment focus. And what I often do the first few times students have a lot of agency with an assignment is get them to write very brief, like not even a whole page, commentary about why their focus is such. And I usually encourage them to connect with some previous learning or content in another course or some life experiences. That list could go on. But I want to know why they've chosen that focus and how that focus is going to motivate their learning. And they usually have some really good ideas about that. Then when I'm providing agency in the format of the assignment, and that's where you all got carried away really well, is I can provide some choices of format, or I can ask them to decide what kind of format. Maybe they want to do a PowerPoint. Maybe some want to write an essay. Some want to talk the ideas. But I want them to see that the format is going to support very different learning approaches for them. So I want them to think about their own learning and how can they best show us what they know and what they've achieved. So again, there's that very brief paper that I get them to use when they're making these decisions. All right, and the next slide. Here's one that people kind of stop and say, are you sure? Determining deadlines. And one of the things I do with that is I encourage them to take the assignment and think of it in terms of all the tasks. And that assignment you looked at really broke that up into all the tasks. So someone had done that for them. But you also might involve them in thinking about what are all the tasks you're going to have to do in order to achieve the finishing of this assignment. And with that in mind, I ask them to suggest some deadlines. And they're actually usually quite reasonable. Of course, you'll have students who have an early deadline because they like to get things done early. And then you'll have students who do things at the very last minute, and probably not going to change some of that. But I want them to become aware of how they work with the deadlines. And usually we do a range. I do that anyway, because I like people to have a range of like a week or 2 weeks, whatever. So anyway, try that. It's a good experiment. And then agency in terms of whether they're going to do it as an individual or a peer or group. And what I get students to think about is when do they have best success and where have they had challenges? And I'm not encouraging them to stay with the same kind of choice all the time, but I am encouraging them to think about when do they work best? When are they challenged most? And what are some things they could do to meet those challenges and change the kind of things they do? Just, again, paying attention to their own learning. And then finally, as many of you noticed, Swarup, I think, really talked about this, the rubric. And often I will give a rubric that still needs some more qualities or some ideas that might help them be better with the assignment. And students will give you some really good extra criteria and descriptions for that. And I want them to get good at that. So that's another place where I provide agency. So those are a few of the ways to encourage student agency. I think we do it in our teaching also. I think we do it in the kind of curriculum we provide. But since we're talking about assignments, there's just so many possibilities in assignments for you to do that and let students make a lot of big, important decisions, which is agency. So I want to share one more thing about assignments. It's from a study that I recently found and been sharing with people. Can we have the next slide, Nelson? And that is something called meaningful assignments. This came from a study of 800 seniors at 3 different colleges who were asked specifically about the most meaningful writing assignment they had had. And they had a lot of wisdom. They shared a lot of reasons why assignments were meaningful. And so that's been collapsed into this definition. And I think it's a great one. I think it's not limited to writing assignments. I think it's limited to assignments in general. So, you know, if students don't see value and importance in the assignment, they don't work very hard. You know, they're kind of like, wonder why we're doing this, and you don't want them to wonder. There's got to be that real world relevance in there. And they also, remember, these were seniors, they also wanted to apply to their future, who they're going to be, and future goals and their previous experiences and their interests, and to provide a new challenge or an opportunity to produce something new and unique. You know, I can remember going through school and having same old assignments, you know, that felt familiar. The one that gets the biggest groan is book reports. And people have just started doing very different, very creative kind of things with that. But when students have the opportunity to produce something new and unique, they get a lot more out of it. So I'm very grateful to those authors. We put their reference in the end, but they've also produced a whole book with this. So those interviews just have yielded so much. And I think the one thing I want to get out of it, besides this definition, is to encourage you to maybe ask that same question, even at the end of a course or at the end of a program, and find out what students thought was meaningful. Because I think, as we say all through our book, they provide so much meaning for us. They can provide us so much wisdom. So I really fell in love with this study and what came out of it. So I wanted to share that definition. All right, I'm going to move us to Nelson with the kind of prompts that he was talking about early.
Thanks,
And
Amy.
from there.
And as you can see, this idea of meaningful assignments is related both to the assignment and the prompt. And when you notice the fact that the assignment prompt that was more transparent included a discussion of the purpose, the skills practiced and the knowledge gained, that's part of helping make the assignment meaningful to students, by being explicit with them about what they should gain from it, how it connects to their future. The purpose, task, and criteria from this framework come from the teaching, the Transparency in Learning and Teaching Framework, or TILT. And they discovered in the TILT framework that just changing 2 assignments over the course of a semester could improve not only students' performance in the classes, but also students' feeling of belonging in the class, and students' attitudes toward the class. We at Cal State Monterey Bay have added context, the communicative context of the assignment. So what prompts the student to write, and who is the audience for the assignment? I've found in my own work that students take a great deal more ownership and commit a lot more effort when they can imagine an authentic context in which they're writing the assignment. So it's not just to a teacher to be graded, but it's also, they're seeing the assignment as communication. They're seeing the work that they're doing as communication. And that makes a huge difference in how they feel about the assignment. It also requires them to do a lot more critical thinking in preparing for the assignment. So the framework is purpose, context, task, and criteria. And as you saw on the 2 examples, the transparent, or on the example of the more transparent, that had a rubric. A rubric is one way to cite criteria. So we're going to hope that the breakout rooms work a little better this time, and send you to breakout rooms for, let's make it, well, we can probably do the 10 minutes. And what we'd like you to do is we'd like you to email or share a copy of your assignment with a partner, and then, see if you can fill out the template with the information on the assignment. So in other words, can you, in fact, identify the purpose, context, task, and criteria on the assignment? And if not, then help your partner think about what they can do to make the assignment more transparent. And then we'll come back and share a little more.
Make sure too that you think about whether there's some more ways for students to exert their agency in that assignment.
Thank you, Amy.
Number 4. Yeah. Screen.
All right, welcome back. Thank you to those of you who stayed around. If anyone wants to share what you learned from your conversations about your assignments, that would be great.
I'd like to know if anybody found ways to add opportunities for agency in those assignments. Something new you haven't typically done before.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say that I didn't realize we were supposed to have assignments, and I'm an assessment coordinator, so I don't have an assignment, but I definitely have heard of other people who had agency. So helping to develop the rubrics or helping to think about the assignment. And especially during COVID, so many people during the pivot really reached out and had this kind of empathetic way of teaching, and said, you know, if you can't come on with video, you know, how can you show me that you learned? Or how can we use perhaps, you know, discussion boards where you can come on at any time and talk
That's
about
great.
things. So things like that, I think, really served as a great model for the type of alignment that we're talking about, and thinking creatively about how we can best meet the students where they are and where they need to be, but also to let them have the agency to show us how they're learning.
Those
Thanks,
are great.
Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
I'll just share briefly in our in my pair, we talked a little bit about you know, general assessments in one assignment that I had, and one of the things that we didn't get a chance to talk about, but I think this webinar has made me think more about, is being more clear about the purpose and of our assignments. Like, I feel like I lead up to that really well, and I give a lot of choice in the assignments, but making absolutely certain that I'm putting that purpose there. And that's something I remind faculty to do all the time. So I need to make sure that I'm also doing it as well.
Thanks,
That's great.
Karen. Yeah, it's one of the things, if we want students to transfer their learning, we have to prompt that, and that those purpose statements are a way to prompt that.
I once read a letter to brand new students to a psych program, which took apart the whole program and showed students what each part of the program was going to do, what the purposes were. It was a really powerful letter that I still remember from years ago. So I think purpose is just critical.
I have a question that I don't want to sidetrack this,
Oh, that's all right.
but as so I'm gearing up to lead a learning design institute, and part of it will attend to assignment design. And so I've been listening to and thinking about, when working with a group of faculty, and maybe anyone who has had experience or some insights on this, I'd love to hear. And using this kind of framework for designing an assignment, what kind of agency do you give faculty in that experience of designing this assignment? So where do you we know there's the PCTC, okay, you got to follow that, but how do you create agency, opportunity for their own agency in the assignment design process?
Well, it starts with, of course, their discipline and the levels that they teach at, which would be beginning to get them thinking about that. And then actually, like you did here, if they have a sample assignment, find ways to build agency into it give them an assignment that has none, and then have them look for places where they can build agency into it. Where could students have a choice? And let them see what they would do with that, is what I would do.
I think the other thing I would say, Todd, is in terms of faculty coming to a workshop like this, you're already exercising agency in choosing to engage, and in choosing to bring an assignment to work on, and in setting the purposes for your assignments. So in terms of faculty agency, this kind of experience is incredibly rich with their agency.
Even something as simple as sharing with a partner or sharing with the whole group.
Yeah.
Is a decision that they can make. And some people will be really comfortable with the whole group, but some people will not. Some people are much more comfortable sharing with one other person. So there's another place where they get to choose that kind of thing. Seems like there'd be a lot of it.
I want to share one more thing, because in last week's webinar, Dan promised that we would talk about these assignment guides that we created at Cal State Monterey Bay. And so hopefully you're seeing the assignment guide on my screen now. Is that correct? You're seeing written communication, critical thinking?
Yeah.
Okay. And what we do in this assignment guide is we take the criteria on the rubric and the descriptors for those criteria and turn them into questions. And these questions are a way for faculty to think about, to make choices about how much information they give students when they create an assignment prompt. And the implication is not necessarily that that you have to have all of this information, but you should think about all of this, right? If these are the criteria that you're going to use to assess, then how much of this information should be explicitly available on the assignment prompt for students? And those assignment guides are linked on the sheet that the Google sheet that we gave you, and also at this URL. So we are just about out of time. I see that Daphne has put a couple of great points into the chat. That I love that question, what are you actually assessing? That's one of the key questions about assessment in general, right, is the validity of your assessment. Are you assessing what you think you're assessing? And yeah, the idea that you can allow for agency in this assessed areas. We are just about out of time.
We have some references.
Yes, the references are not on the slides. They're on the Google Sheet. They're on the Google Doc.
I want to mention something. When I went looking for more references on agency, I just found some gorgeous examples in elementary and secondary teaching. And one of the authors whose work was just mind-boggling to me is a man named Tom Vander Ark, V-A-N-D-E-R-A-R-K, 2 words. So if you're looking around for some ideas, in addition to the references we provided, you might want to look at Tom's work, because I was incredibly inspired by all the ideas and I'm going to use them. So that's just a little addition.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah.
And Patty, I know that you've got some things to say to wrap up.
Yes, thank you so much, Nelson. All right, thank you to Amy and Nelson for sharing their time and presenting this webinar opportunity. And thank you to everyone who tuned in live with us this afternoon and for being flexible with us for this new Zoom format. If you are interested in pre-ordering Advancing Assessment for Student Success, use code AAST25 to get 25% off the book and free shipping from Stylus Publishing. I'll also share the link to the book in the chat. Also, all of the royalties from this book will go directly to the CSUMB Student Emergency Fund. I will also share the link to the book page, the slides, and the chat log on the book page later on after this webinar. And the book is set to publish on June 30th. The webinar video replay will be available tomorrow and shared on all of our Stylus social media feeds. And if you have registered, you will get a thank you email with all of those links, as well as contacts to our authors as well. If you have any feedback on this webinar or any requests for future webinars, please feel free to email us directly at stylusinfo@styluspub.com. I will stay for the next couple minutes, so that way if anyone wants to save any links or has any last questions for our authors, you may do so. And thank you all so much for coming.